but it was a conscious effort. And one of the reasons that she was being so difficult now looking back is because she was vibing off the energy that you and I had that was intense.
Okay, welcome to the Weaponized Marriage Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Hewitt.
I'm your host, Kendra Hewitt.
In today's episode, we are going to talk about parenting.
Yes.
So this is
something we haven't talked about
Yeah,
yet.
Kendra really wanted to do a parenting episode. So for those of you who have children, this applies to you. For those of you who don't have kids and eventually want to have children, this applies to you. For those of you who don't want to have children, then this will not apply to you. You can just
Not true.
skip this episode.
Not true.
Oh, that's actually not true, right?
Because we're going to talk about reparenting.
Yeah.
And reparenting, if you were ever a kid before, applies to anyone that was ever a kid before.
True. So, but I mean, especially if you want to be a role model, you want to be a leader, you want to be anybody who commands any sort of like, I suppose, place of importance in somebody's life, right? If you want to be respected, emulated, anything like that, I think this episode applies for sure.
And when it comes to marriage, I felt like this episode would really apply to like, man, you want to talk about marriage being a people growing machine, you add a kid to it, and it's a whole other level, right? And we only have one kid that we've added to the mix. So
yeah, well, I know.
Like,
I was just saying today, like, I don't know how people have multiple children, let alone twins, let alone like having multiple children very close together in age. Like, I couldn't imagine having like Lily times 2 or 3.
Oh my God, no.
Like, I don't.
Well, and I think we should also say that up front too, is that like this is going to apply hopefully to you regardless of what age your children are.
Sure. Absolutely. And by the way, we're not parenting experts, that's for damn sure.
That is definitely for sure.
But I would say that something that we connect on and that philosophically we align on is that we want to parent on purpose with Lily. So I don't know about you, but I definitely grew up in a home where it was just parenting by default.
Yep.
And then parenting by default, and a lot of people will resonate with this, is like you end up being parented by your parent who is parented the same way as their parent. So you basically inherit your parenting methods or skills or whatever you want to call it.
Lack thereof.
Yeah, exactly. Just by kind of osmosis, like whatever type of home you grew up in, you just by default end up just emulating the way that you were parented, or the way that you were like not necessarily like disciplined or reprimanded, but like I guess the way that you're parented. I don't know how to say it any other way, right?
Yeah, and the reason that this is coming up where I wanted to make it an episode was because you're in the process right now that I think anyone who becomes a parent goes through probably multiple times. But at the same time of like the concept, we start talking about the concept of reparenting yourself. And so I want to get into that, but I want to back up a little bit and just kind of say where this came from for me, if that's okay.
Yeah, and yes, go ahead.
Okay. So I'm in a mom's group where through my church, which has been really, really awesome for me. I don't get to go often anymore, but I remembered back to some of the stuff we've been going through recently. At the beginning of this session, they did a segment on, and it's driven a lot by parenting on purpose, like parenting with intention, parenting with God as your guide, but which is very new concept for me. And Lily's only 4. But one of the questions they posed at the beginning of the moms group was, what age parent are you? And I was like, well, this is a very interesting question. And they started to teach this segment about how like your emotional behavior as a parent is tied to an age, and it might not be the age of your child.
Oh yeah. And what age did you put me at?
No. It was we were judging ourselves. Okay.
Yeah, right. But I'm sure you're thinking about me.
Well, it goes back to that thing that I say all the time, is that like most men are toddlers in some sort of, but I actually put myself in the toddler phase because I was in this place where I am in the process of reparenting myself a little bit about, like, actually feeling my feelings. And I thought about it, how it was like, that's really been a challenge for me. And it's interesting with Lily being 4, is she's in that phase right now where it's like she's starting to have big feelings, but, like, not necessarily
Starting to.
know how to do that, right?
It's always starting.
So I wanna bring it to this, why this came up for me this week, because that meeting about mom's group was, like, months ago. But it was something that really kinda stuck with me, of, like, you go into these phases where, like, you have to start reparenting yourself a little bit, which is actually a real concept in psychology of reparenting yourself. And I want to read what it define it. Um, the first definition that came up was taking responsibility for healing and nurturing your inner child, which you alluded to recently in a couple episodes, and you've been working on with yourself. And some of this is discussing the recommendations are discussing the connection between reparenting yourself and how it affects your role as a parent, how unresolved childhood wounds can manifest in your parenting style, the importance of modeling healthy behaviors, emotional regulation, and self-compassion. And um the old childhood wounds kind of thing really was where I started to get interested in this, because I wasn't really, like, aware of them. Like, I had an awesome childhood, but I wasn't really aware about how it was affecting my parenting until I became one. Specifically for me, it came up a lot when I first had Lily, and I realized how bad I freaking sucked at asking for help. And I realized that this was part of, because as a child, I was extremely independent almost by default. Like, my mom wasn't there a lot. She was working a lot, because my dad had passed away. And I started to realize is that, like, some of this, my resistance and frustration with, like, even, like, facilitating routines, and where this really showed up for me, and I talked about this at my mom's group, was twofold. One is when I was, breastfeeding Lily, and I was really frustrated with the process, like the rinse and repeat process, and I was having so many challenges with it, but I didn't know how to literally ask for help. And then the second part of it that this really came up for me was when I had to potty train Lily. And, like, you wanna talk about a humbling experience to show you how bad you suck at routine, potty training definitely was it for me. Like, we had a couple failed attempts, and then, Lily started to get it, but I started to realize that the reason Lily was failing was because I was really sucking at sticking to, like, the routine and the directions of, like, how to actually potty train a kid, which obviously I'd never done before. And I started to realize that, like, there was a lot of things that I started figuring out myself as a kid, and I didn't even ask for help, and then when I did ask for help, I would get really frustrated, with, like, myself, with the person trying to help me, whoever it was. And I started to see this frustration, same type of frustration start to come out in Lily.
Mhm.
And I got really sad about it actually, because I was like, "Oh man, I don't want her to be like a perfectionist like me." And I was like, "Okay, she's 2, 3 years old at this time, right? Like, why is this showing up?" But the reason that I'm bringing this up is that even the other day, we had a really rough day with Lily. She's just been the last couple weeks, really, like, I don't want to say defiant. Not That's not the word. She's just very strong willed, and I feel like a lot of people's advice to me is always like, "Oh my god, you'll love this when she's older." I'm like, "Really?" I'm trying to accept that, but if I knew myself, I didn't love that about myself. And so I it really brought me back to parenting with purpose, like being intentional instead of reactive to how we're raising Lily. And even though you and I are on the same page on a lot of things, I think that you're a little bit now starting to reparent yourself with some of the things that have come up with Lily lately. And one of the things that I think was that made me the catalyst for us starting this episode was I was telling Ryan that yesterday I came home and we were brushing our teeth before bedtime, and I looked down in the trash barrel, and there was a
Oh
picture
my god.
of Lily and Ryan in the trash. And this was like a Lily and Ryan picture from I think she was
It
2.
was like a photo booth picture.
Yeah, it was like a photo like a fun photo booth picture, and it's been on her, like, nightstand for, like, months, right?
No, 2 years?
And it was
3
ripped
years?
up. Yeah, probably 2 years. It was ripped up, and I looked in the trash and I said, "Oh my god, Lily, why are your pictures in the trash?" And she looked at me and she looked like she was her brain was trying to compute what she was gonna say to me.
And she
And
fucking lied to you.
and
It's the first thing out of her mouth is a lie.
yeah, which is normal for a kid,
Oh,
right?
sure.
And, so
Yeah, what'd she say? She said, "I don't like the way I look in it." Is what
she
she said.
said, "I didn't look
I
pretty in
didn't
the
look
picture,"
pretty in the
and my
picture.
heart just
Which is
kinda dropped,
another, like
right?
yeah.
And
Like, oh my
then
god,
I was like, "Okay,
you're
you're gonna"
4.
I said, "Get yourself really centered," meaning talking to myself, "and ask her to tell you more." So I asked her to tell me, and I said, "Well, how can you tell me why, like, why do you think that?" And, she said, "Well," and then she said, "Well, when daddy put me in my room the other day, I got really angry with him." I was like, "Okay."
That was truth.
And I was like, "That was truth." And I said, "Tell me more." And she's like, "So I ripped them up and I threw them in the trash." And then she's like, "Don't tell daddy." And I was like, "Man, how I respond right now is going to really determine, like, first of all,
By her
she
telling you the truth,
she
yeah.
told me the
Yeah.
truth. And even though I was super sad, I was like, "Well, if you, don't want me to tell daddy, you can tell him yourself because his feelings might be really hurt that you," and she said, "It's okay, we can take another picture." And I said, "But you're not gonna be 2 years old because now you're 4." And she's like, "Oh."
Mm.
And so then this is full circle why I want to do this episode today. This morning when she came into bed, she said, "Did you tell daddy about the picture?" And I said, "No, you asked me not to." And I haven't. And she said, "I have to think about how I want to tell him." And I said, "Okay, you do that and let me know what you decide." And I thought about it in this moment of like, man, I could have reacted and just been like, "Why did you do that? That
Mm,
wasn't nice." All like, that's going to hurt his
mhm,
feelings. I could have made her totally feel
mhm.
a different way, but she's not young. She's too young to like be able to like understand what that is. And in the moment, I looked in the mirror at myself and I'm talking physically. And I was like, this is what you need to be able to like start to do for yourself. And it was a reparenting moment for myself of like,
Mhm,
hey, you need to get calm enough where you can actually think about the feelings
mhm.
rather than respond and react to it because reactivity is different than response. And so I wanted to talk about this today because it's like, regardless of what your age your kids are is like, are you being reactive or are you actually responding? And one of the tools that came up for me was just like asking me, like, tell me more instead of judging, like, going right into like my actual like reactivity.
Mhm.
And it made me really kind of start to confront that is like our children are our mirrors. And we also had a weekend where Lily being difficult really put more stress on our marriage and we started taking it out on each other. And we were while we came in to recover quick, I just wanted to bring it up is like, but it was a conscious effort. And one of the reasons that she was being so difficult now looking back is because she was vibing off the energy that you and I had that was intense.
Mhm,
And one of the things I remember that I shared with you was you can't meet her chaos with your chaos.
mhm,
And it brought me back to this concept of like looking into the reparenting and trying to start to think about like how do I need to reparent myself in this moment. And I also think that it was an opportunity for me to ask as a podcast episode, and we're going to work through this live time because part of the reason we started this podcast is so that we're working on ourselves live time with you watching to encourage you to do the same, but we want to keep it real. Like this is something that's coming up. I don't want to have a canned podcast episode. I want to have it real. So, with that said, um I know you and I are always on the same page that we want to parent on purpose, but sometimes the wheels come off the
Mhm,
bus a little bit. And this weekend was one of those times.
mhm,
So I want one of the things that I really thought about with the reparenting is like looking back at your childhood. And part of reparenting is looking back at your childhood and how things that are going to appear that are unhealed in you.
mhm.
Or things a way that you did not get an emotional response that you really wanted from your parents, but now you're looking at it from another source. So I thought it'd be a really good opportunity to like progress into like kind of what's coming up for you with this reparenting concept because I just introduced it to you maybe like 1 or 2 weeks ago when stuff started coming up of like what you needed from your childhood that you didn't get that you're starting to heal by
Okay.
now being a parent.
Well, since you talked for, like, the last 15 minutes,
Sorry.
I'll
You're
s
right, 15 minutes exactly.
I know. So I'll share you where I'm at and where my brain's at and where my thought process is because, like, for me, I think, like, I made a decision a long time ago that I wanted differently for my life, you know, based on, like, what I observed was fine, right? Everything like, I had a great childhood, I had great friends, I grew up in a great city and, like, hit the jackpot, being born in North America, like, all these things that I'm very fortunate to have, but I always knew in my heart I wanted different. I knew there was a different way, and I sought it out, and little did I know it would be like, the most difficult journey I could ever decide to take, and I've taken journeys in all areas of my life. Like I heard this concept. It was somebody who was talking about, what is, do you believe in a soulmate? I think was the
Mhm,
question to this person. And this person said, well, I believe that you fall in love 3 times in your life. The first time you fall in love is like, it's a firework, right? It's like hot and heavy and huge explosions, but then it fades away quickly.
mhm,
It's like young love, basically. And then there's the candle, right? Which is like it burns, but it burns slowly, but you typically move on from the candle, right? It's just what isn't quite what you want it to be. And then there's the mirror, right? A lot of
mhm,
people, then when you encounter the mirror, you either recognize that this person is in your life, God put them in your life as your mirror, and you're man enough to recognize the things that are in this person that you want to change in yourself and you want to be better for them. And that creates a really strong marriage, I think, and that's who you are for me as a mirror. But I think a lot of people, they go from one to the next, right? And they find the mirror and the mirror's
mhm,
broken, so then they go back to the firework,
mhm.
right? And
Or they don't wanna look in the mirror.
well, the mirror's broken or they don't wanna look in the mirror, right?
Mhm,
And then they move on, and that's why you're saying, like, marriage is a people growing machine, as
mhm,
Steven says. It is, right? Like, you're no matter what, you're with your spouse long enough, you're gonna see the worst fucking shit in the world in them, and they're gonna see the worst possible shit in you. And you're either gonna recognize that in each other and work on it and get better, or you're gonna be like, "No, I'm gonna go find I don't have the energy or the desire to work on that," right? I'm gonna go back to the firework or find the candle, the safe. So, like, the hardest process for me was to find my soulmate who's the mirror and look in this mirror and repair the mirror, right, in a marriage. So I wanted to create a marriage that I knew was possible in my heart, but I just was never shown that growing up, right?
mhm,
And the second thing was business. Like, all I knew my whole life was like W-2 employee, work for money, trade time for money, right? Pay your taxes. Like, until I became a business owner, like, that was the like, another very, very difficult mountain I had to climb, was to completely change who I was, um, in my nervous system as, like, a born and bred employee, right?
mhm,
My parents were employees, my parents' families were employees, like, nobody was entrepreneurial. My friends, none of them were entrepreneurial, none of their family members were. I didn't even know that was a possibility until, like, I started visiting other chiropractors that had their own businesses and they're entrepreneurial. I was like, "Oh my god, these people are amazing." So, figuring little did I know that that journey was gonna be really, really, really fucking hard, right? So, in marriage and then in business and then in my body, of course, like, going on that journey of, like, breaking my body and
Mhm.
figuring out and, like, what true health and fitness is, especially as I age and then, finding God again. But then this whole thing happens now, which is called, like, having a child and parenting. And it's completely fucked with my head because this is, like, when like, for a reason, this is why it's coming up that like, all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, I'm like, I feel like I'm the angriest I've ever been and, like, completely unable to control my reactivity and my emotions, and I'm acting like my fucking 4-year-old, and I'm like my 4-year-old screaming and yelling, and I'm fucking yelling at her, and, like, I'm like, "Oh my god," like, the last thing I want is to be this parent who's like, I'm not verbally abusive, but I'm, like, yelling at her, right? I'm not call
I know,
what I'm
it's
saying? I'm
just
not
it's
calling her
funny.
names of, like, I'm not doing things that are, like, horrible parent things, but I'm like, I'm not proud of all the interactions that I have with her,
Mhm.
right? And it kills me to not to feel that, like, I don't want her growing up in the type of marriage that I observed. I don't want her growing up, being parented the way I was parented. Not that there was, like, anything horribly wrong with the way I grew up, but I know that there's a better way that's gonna help foster her, like, confidence and independence and security and self, love
Mhm.
and, like, her, like, creative spirit and all these things that I know you can't, like, no matter what anybody tells you, like, you have nature, but nurture is, like, a massive part of it.
More is caught than taught.
Yeah, exactly. More is caught than taught. So, like, for me, this reparenting thing, it just started with this finally at, like, an understanding of, like, okay, yeah, I have this, like, wounded inner boy that I need to figure out how I'm going to make sure that I have a handle on this, like, person that reacts when they get squeezed and there's chaos and there's, like, uncertainty and then there's, like, stress and then there's, like, yelling and then and there's a 4-year-old. There's all these things that are going on all at once. It's like, can you step back? Can you take a breath? Can you see yourself as a 4-year-old? And, like, how would you want to be parented as that 4-year-old girl, boy? Um, and do what you just did, right? It was like, well, what's the what is the best possible approach to this situation? You know what I mean? So I'm not there yet. I don't know how to do that, but I'm aware of it. And it's something that I think is gonna
Awareness is the first step, Brian.
it's something that's gonna need work, but, I don't think I have the playbook.
Mhm. But I think that you just like I said, that's I wanted to hear you talk through it because, you starting to confront, like, those where those emotional needs or hurts and, were as a child, and I think it is coming up for you because it was around this age when you were a kid from what you've told me, that you started to, like, hear all of this, like, it's the unconscious programming of like, "Hey, this is what a marriage looks like," and you've decided that that's not what you want your marriage to look like.
Mm,
And that's why I wanted to talk about it on the podcast today because I was like, "Man, it's just another layer of healing that has to be done." And, like, it takes courage to do that healing,
mhm,
and it takes patience, but it also takes intention, and your intention is to be a parent with a purpose, right? And that's not gonna say like, I think there's, like, lots of talk about, like, at some point, you're gonna fuck your kid up, like, or you just don't know how, right? Or how bad.
Well, I mean, no matter what, they're gonna be pissed at you for something, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's, like, choosing the
Whether
things
you
that are
give them too
really
much or you didn't give them enough.
yeah, but it's choosing the things that, like, really are important to you and aligning with you as a couple. Um, and of like, "Hey, here's the things that are really, like, we value and we wanna instill in our kids." And one of the things that came out this weekend was the reminder that, like, we don't want to be arguing with intensity in front of our daughter.
Mhm,
And us starting to figure out one person's gotta self-regulate so that you guys can regulate together. And one of the things that I started to realize too is that, like, man, I didn't have a lot of regulation coping skills that as a child because I didn't really see any of that, like, anger or whatever. So your, perspective is totally different because I didn't have 2 parents to model,
Mm.
and versus you did, and you had a totally different experience. So the reason I'm saying this part is that, like, just making a decision as a couple is, like, of communicating on like, "Hey, what are the real core values that you want to bring up in your child? What do you want your focus to be on?" And addressing them when they things come up that you're like, "Hey, it wasn't okay." Just like we did this weekend. I was like, "Hey, it wasn't okay that you called me that in front of Lily." Because even though she didn't hear it, we don't know that
Mhm.
because they are listening to everything.
Mhm.
And then she started to talk back to us like, "Why are you guys arguing?" And like that like was something that's, like, really important to you that, like, you didn't want to repeat that pattern. So, but for you to interrupt the pattern, you have to be first aware of it, and then you have to figure out the strategy that's gonna help you start to shift it.
Yeah, and so you have to do that in yourself. No one's gonna do that for you. I don't think therapy is gonna do that for you. So I realized, like, I think, like, I just wake up sideways a lot of days. Like, if I don't have a routine to get me
Mhm,
in the right state every day, like, my attitude can go sideways pretty quickly. Um, so that's why, like, with Warrior, what they teach is a core 4, which you start, in the morning with some sort of routine that's gonna put you in a state of power. So, and if that sounds foreign to people, it's just pretty much the same thing as, like, well, have you ever, like, felt really good one day and realized, like, "Oh, it's because, like, I worked out," or because, like, I got some time to myself and I was able to, like, read and have a cup of coffee and whatever. So, for me, it's not necessarily I don't have to exercise in the morning. I don't think that is what does it for me. It's
mhm,
n at all, because I just exercise no matter what. It's just part of who I am, what I do.
mhm,
For me, it's more like I have to get my head straight with my thoughts. So, through things like the meditation and the journaling, like the mindset stuff is bigger for me. Obviously, like, I need to have a good sleep. I don't do well on the whole sleep
mhm.
deprivation thing.
Neither
Uh,
do I.
so getting to bed on time is critical for me if I want to show up as the best version of who I want to be the next day. And then I need to have that morning routine where I'm getting up early before everybody else, and I have that 45 minutes to an hour where I can do a meditation and a breath work and, like, sort out my thoughts, you know, and that's enough for me. I don't need 2 hours, I don't need 3 hours, I don't need to do a CrossFit workout before, you
Mhm.
know, like, I don't feel, like, super angry when I wake up, but I just feel like if I don't ground myself, that I'm gonna be easily pushed off balance.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to, like, kinda bring it to a close is, like, you have to figure out what grounds yourself. And mine looks totally different.
Well, yeah, because
Um
you don't get up early.
Yes, and I don't function well with that. Like, I know the window of time of, like, when is actually when I drop Lily off for school, and I've been up a couple hours, and everybody's in the house. Like, there's no one in the house except for Huckleberry waiting for me to take him for a walk,
Mhm.
right? And even though he does look at me until I do that. But, like, for
He needs
me,
his routine
I
too.
also need I find that for me, the most grounding thing is actually taking him for a walk where I start to process, "Hey, here's what I'm feeling. Here's what," like, I don't listen to headphones. I don't listen to a podcast when I walk, nothing like that. Because for me, I need that space, and outside in nature where I'm moving my body is actually a really good way for me to do that. Versus if you tell
Mhm.
me to lay down and meditate for 30 minutes, that's basically like you're just asking for disaster. So I know that about myself, but when it comes to a couple, this is where I wanted to bring this episode in hopes of like, is also like, I think that there are a lot of couples that, including on date night, it's like, I know this from friends that like they'll go out, but like their whole date night is talking about their kids,
Mm.
right? And to me, that's like some of that's fun, but, like, also making time for you guys to connect on way more than just your schedule as a family.
Mhm.
Of like, "Hey, this is coming up for Lily. This is important to her." Like, for example, Ryan and I talked last week about our meeting, like, our family meeting, just about, like, "Hey, what are some of the skills we want Lily to work on this summer?" Which means that both of us need to be involved in and helping them. And one of the things that we want to do is like start teaching her how to read, and utilizing that energy. And it's like, man, that's the kind of conversation that I want to plan out with you, where it's like, hey, we're both on the same page. It's like not like, hey, what time do you need to get her to t-ball practice? It's more like, hey, what is the direction our family's going in, and what do we value? Right now, this last quarter, we focused on like teaching her how to swim because that's an important skill that we want her to have. But we also talked last week when we met about like cultivating, like signing her up for an art class because she's really into art right now. And one of the best things that I thought about last week, was when I listened to this calm parenting podcast, which if you haven't listened to that he's a great podcast. And he talked about how he had this very turbulent relationship with his 7-year-old boy. And about from 1 to 7, that his son, he just really struggled with connecting with him. And, finally, he asked his son one day, like, like, "What would you like to do with me?" And he was like, "You know what?" He's like, "I'd really just like to, like, take a walk with you. Like, you go for a walk every day." And the dad was like, "I had no idea that my kid wanted to take a walk with me." But the kid unconsciously realized that the only time he got his dad's attention when it wasn't on something else was when he actually was physically out of the house. And so the 7-year-old boy asked to start walking with his dad. So they do these like Monday meetings where they take a walk before he goes to school,
Mm.
and he tells him what's coming up for that week. The son does. And he's like, it's totally reconnected and bonded him. And one of his tips was he's like, really meet your child, regardless of what age they are at, on something that's interesting to them instead of it becoming annoying to you. So he's like, and he used the example as video games. There's a lot of parents that are totally annoyed by their kids playing video games. He's like, but what if you looked at it as that's the time that you could actually really connect with your child, is like, hey, let's play a video game today for 20 minutes together. Now, that certainly wouldn't appeal to me, but like, even like I think about, like I said, that us investing and just being like, hey, what's Lily really into right now? Well, she's into art. So let's do some investment in art in terms of time with her, and then also encourage that passion. That might not always be the passion. So, just really starting, that's what I wanted to close this episode is like, do you have a parenting on purpose meeting? Not a scheduling meeting
Mm.
where it's like, hey, you need to be here at 5 p.m. on this time. And like, hey, Susie Q's got to sign up for school next week. And all of these task oriented things, where it's more of like, do you have a meeting where it's on purpose time for like you as a parent? And we live in such overscheduled worlds right now that I don't think that this is something that a lot of families have on their agenda. And making time to have that on purpose parenting meeting, I think, is where I really wanted to just kind of go this week. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's good. I don't think you have to have that discussion on date night. I think that's a
That's
whole.
what I'm saying. It's separate from date night, where it's not like you're downloading at date night all of these things that
No, but
are
I think you can
task
have a
and
I think
management
you can have a
oriented.
family meeting where you're doing both. You're doing the
Yeah.
scheduling and then what do you wanna
And
work
it
on?
doesn't have to be traditional, like a meeting with a sit down and agenda. It can just be like, hey, what's something one of my favorite Back to Mom's group, one of the leaders of Mom's group, her name's Kelly. She has 4 kids. They're in their 20s now, most of them, all in college. And one of the things that's most amazing she shared is about how when they used to have family dinners, and their family dinners, they would all go around the table and they would share like what's something
Family dinner, what's that?
yeah, what's something you're excited
We don't
about?
have family dinners.
What's something you're excited about? What's something or someone you're praying for? And what's something that's like, you need some help with? And those were the 3 questions. And they had them framed, and they had them framed above their dining room table. And what she was telling the story about was about how kids would come over and they would all get a turn. So like, Susie Q would bring home this friend and this friend would have to go. And there were so many friends that were like just they never had that experience with their own family. So they were almost
No,
like, I don't
we
even
don't even
know
have
how
we
to.
don't even have family dinners.
So then that's something you need to bring up at this parenting on purpose meeting, is that it's important to me we have family dinners and they're at this time on, Tuesdays, right?
Once a
And
week.
then we all once a week, whatever it is. And yes, we do need to get better at that. But the reason I bring this example up is that, like, she's kinda started that tradition and it's stuck, and she said that even when her kids come from home from college now, it's like they are so excited to get those 3 questions out and everybody to go around and share what's, like, coming up for them, what's on their heart that you otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity to do, because she's just sharing about how she used to do this with when she would drive them, like, to carpool or, like, to school or whatever, and now she doesn't get that gift anymore. She doesn't get to drive them to school anymore because now they're in college.
Mhm.
So, just really coming together with your spouse and just be like, "Hey, part of a on purpose and powerful weaponized marriage is also having a parenting meeting regardless of how old they are."
Mhm.
Maybe it's they are in college and you're planning a trip, like a family trip. And it's like, how could we make it fun for each person in the family?
Mhm.
Not like the one kid that's like, I gotta go to Aruba again with, my family.
Maybe.
I'm so sad about that, like, so just kind of becoming more aware of where do you need to reparent yourself? Where do you need to be more purposeful with your parenting with your children? And where do you need to connect with your spouse on your parenting strategies?
That's good. That's good wrap up.
Right?
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Okay. You wrap it up this week.
All right.
Let's see how you do.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. Make sure you like, share, and review.
Rate, review, and subscribe.
I
But
never
yes,
get
we
that
would
right.
like you to share it too.
Rate, review, subscribe, and yes, share it with anybody you like. And always send us messages, suggestions. A lot of people have approached us and told us in person how much they enjoy listening. So it's fuel for us to continue to bring these topics and these good conversations with you. So we do appreciate the encouragement. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the next episode next week.